Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I was reminded of this experiment, we'll call it, on the Facebook group where somebody said about cutting rhizomes on certain plants to rejuvenate the back part of the plant, but without repotting and splitting. So you don't lose your old roots, they're still in place, nothing gets disturbed. And when I did it, I said we'd revisit, and promptly completely forgot all about it. So a nice reminder on the Facebook group. Does serve a purpose. Brilliant. This was one that we looked at. I've tried to position it as it was in the original video where we did the cuts, and I'll put the link to that video under this one. But this video is going to serve two purposes. Following on from my YouTube, you know, about doing videos and getting started and things, some people have asked actually how I do put a video together. So I'm going to do a video on how I put a video together using this video. But I can't film that one until I film this one, so they'll get posted the other way round, but I've got to film them this way round. I've got to film it before I can film how I put it together, if you see what I mean. So this will be the one we'll use. You following this? I hope that came out right. Anyway, when we first did this, we looked at the plant that was heading off in two directions and decided that this part of the plant here had enough growths to be able to make a cut down in there, which was made about there where my finger is, yeah? And it did push up a new shoot, this one here. You can see that started from behind. The lead of the plant is here, here, here and here. And I think at the time we had a new growth in that point. Right, so we've produced a new growth on that part of the plant here, which is, yep, there are some buds in that sheath. So it's also going to bloom, which is good. And the new growth at the time pushed up and did something funny. I wonder if that's as a consequence of the registered damage behind it. But this plant has trouble deciding whether it's a unifoliate or a bifoliate, so it does a bit of each. Can't make its mind up. This one here only had a single leaf. This one's got a single leaf. This one had two. Some of the older ones have got two. But this strong growth, which is a good one, decided to push a sheath out, which then turned into a leaf, nearly, and then pushed a sheath out from inside that. So that one's doing something a trifle strange. That does have a very solid base, so I think that's got buds in as well. So that's what happened at that end of the plant. Cut was made back here, new growth carried on, and an old eye pushed out and produced a new growth with associated new roots. Now around the other side of the plant, what we did here was we cut in there, yeah? So again, we had some bulbs out the front leading off, yeah? This is the latest one, that's also got buds in. And this part produced a new growth right back here. Now this really is behind the old part of the plant. You know, I've got leafless canes here and a tiny little bulb here as that lead head off in that direction, and that's pushed out a new growth here. So as a consequence of the two cuts, the two leads I already had carried on progressing, and I produced two new growths. So I've now got 4 leads where there was 2. Oh, cat coming in. Come and say hello. Come on, come and say hello. That's if you can get on camera here. Just twist the camera. Oops. This is not a good idea, messing about with the camera when you're filming. There, now you can say hello to everybody. Oh, you're freezing cold. Why do you go off in the cold, eh? Cat. He disappeared about 6:30 this morning. He's just come back. 10 o'clock, you dirty stop out. Anyway, I suspect he's hungry, so off you go and find something to eat. Right, where was I? Camera all over the place now. Where did we get to? Interrupted by cat. So I'm just trying to see my screen here, so I'm not pointing at the floor. There we go, somewhere about there. But that's made you dizzy, isn't it? Camera all over the place. There we go. Right, so on this particular plant, 2 cuts produce 2 back eyes that have pushed on. Now this is quite a weak growth compared with the size of some of the others, but nonetheless it's got a sheath and it may bloom, but it's a lead. It will then produce a new growth. So I've now got 4 places on that plant that should produce new growths, and if and when that happens, it's going to be out of the pot, isn't it? That's another worry, but not for now. Right, let's get that one out of the way. That was Young Min Orange. And then this was the other one we had a go at. And this was a single lead. This one headed off in this direction, yeah? And on this one, you can clearly see the cut. You can see the dark line across the rhizome under my finger there, yeah? So that's where we made the cut, and it promptly pushed out a back eye. So this one pushed out 1 new growth from a single cut. The rest of the leaders pushed on, and what have we got? Where's the latest one round here? No, it's right round here. Latest one round here has a sheath, no sign of buds yet, and the new growth is now around the other side of the plant, so it's now heading off in 2 directions instead of 1. Well, that's the orange hybrid. So in both of these cases it worked. So it is worth a try. And as a consequence, this back end of the plant, because it pushed out a new lead, it generated a new root system in this point, where it only had old tired roots before. So the beauty of having 2 leads is 2 sets of roots, which puts a lot of strength back into the plant. It doubles the amount of input to the plant. So they both worked. And as a consequence of them both working, I'm going to do it on this one, which is a bit of a risk. And the reason I'm doing it on this one is I'm fed up with it only having 1 lead. So it's going to get the treatment. This is my Ivanagara apple blossom, which currently has its best growth yet, with a sheath. Now this one does funny things. Sometimes the buds come straight out between the 2 leaves, and other times it does a sheath and then pushes the buds out. But it's highly likely to bloom unless what I'm about to do messes it up, because the buds haven't formed yet, but the new growth is fully formed. And what we've got on this plant is, from the oldest part, I've got no leafless bulbs here. They've all got leaves on, although the oldest bulb is very, very tired and the leaf is quite manky. This one got a bit burnt, got singed in the sun. So although it's a Cattleya type, this one doesn't like quite such high light as some of the others, which you find out the hard way. So coming forward then, we've got our manky bulb, followed by this one, followed by this one which kicked out sideways. That's probably what I bought, maybe that one as well. Did that one bloom? Yes, that one. In fact, they've all bloomed, every single one. So obviously when I bought it, it was a division, not a young plant, yeah, because all bulbs had already bloomed, so it had been taken off a good blooming sized plant. It then grew on and pushed up this one. It then pushed up this one, and then it pushed up this one, which is the one with the current sheath in, that hopefully is going to bloom. And the fact that I've got a perfect place there, which gives me 4 strong bulbs, all fully formed, all with leaves on, in front of the cut. What it leaves behind are 3 bulbs, 2 with a pair of leaves on and 1 very old one with a tired leaf that's going to fall off in the not too distant future. But I'm looking at, there is a potential for an eye to form here. There is also a potential for an eye to form on this bulb down near the base. And like I've said with Cattleya types, even though you may not be able to see the dormant eye, if it twigs that there's been damage up ahead where the blooms ought to be, and its perpetuation would be as a consequence of forming seed, it will fire backwards and actually say, I've lost my ability to bloom. So my survival is pretty limited, yeah? So I'll kick something out farther back and it'll generate a new eye where there wasn't one. So on this one, I've got a wire going across there. This has already been sterilised. I'm going to cut it there. And do it with a sharp knife. Try and cut it, not crush it, if you see what I mean. That's why you need a sharp knife, and then you'll hear it crack. Yeah. So we've got a nice cut. Now some people say cut halfway through. Others say cut right through. I've always cut right through. So I now have a gap. And now, like all good video makers, I'm fully prepared. Not. I'm going to try and get some cinnamon in that cut. So I just need a bit of water on the knife to get the cinnamon to stick to it. And we'll get some cinnamon on both sides of the knife. And then hopefully I can ease that cut apart. Slide the knife in the gap. There we go. And get cinnamon on both sides of the cut. And that will just dry them off and stop any infection getting in there. And that's it, job done. Short and sweet. And now we will watch. Because I lost track of the original experiment, I haven't got a clue how long it took before those back eyes decided to fire off and produce new growths. But we do have a date and time on this video, and I'll make a note in my notes. Good place to put notes, isn't it? Yeah, a note in your notes. Of the fact that this one was cut on this date, and then we can keep our eye on it. I don't believe that's going to affect the blooming on the latest growth. It's such a large, strong growth, and it's got backup. Even though it's lost a bit of the back end of the plant, it wouldn't have been totally dependent on it. So I think we should be okay. So that's that. And we'll keep our eye on all three, but the two that have already had their cuts and already produced their growths, they're not going to produce any more as a consequence of the cuts. But like I said, where I had 2 leads, I've now got 4. Where I had 1, I've now got 2, which doubles the potential for blooming. And quite honestly, for most of us anyway, isn't that what it's all about, the blooms? Yeah? So anyway, a little bit of an experiment, and this will now become the basis of how I put my videos together. So it's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. See you next time. Bye for now.